All right, welcome back to the channel, guys. I am going to be reviewing the top 8 deck lists from Deck Devastators 3, an event that took place this weekend, the weekend of February 4th and 5th. And we have some interesting things here. So Edison keeps evolving, which I really like because it means longevity for the format. It's still very clearly not solved. Like, yes, on one hand, I think Black Wings are the best deck overall. But the good thing about Edison format is that it's not called Blackwing format. It's not called that for a reason, because even though Blackwings could be the best deck and everything, it doesn't win every tournament. And that is, I'm glad, because I think the Blackwing mirror match is actually awful. Despite the fact that the deck is very good, the mirror match is not. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. It's way too swingy. There's cards like Black Whirlwind and Sirocco, and just actual trap cards. Like if somebody draws traps and you do not, you are going to get bodied. And they also have to be relevant traps at the right time. So like you need your bottomlesses at the right time. Otherwise you just get Icarus on your bottomlesses and stuff like that. You need your deep prisons at the right time after the monster is summoned. And you don't want to draw bottoms, obviously, after your opponent establishes a board. Stuff like that. Like there's a lot of really annoying things about the mirror match that just make it a very swingy, high variance game, and that is never a good thing. But outside of that, there's still a lot of decks being made in Edison format, and I guess let's just start with top 8. So this is going to go in ascending order. So I'm going to start from the bottom, basically the bottom 4 players, and then we're going to get up to top 4 and then the winner. This is a hybrid deck. This is hybrid Black Wings, the deck that I have played probably the most in the last few months, and it's by a player named Samo Pustino. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Sorry if I'm not. But this deck looks very standard for hybrid. It actually plays the exact same monster lineup that I play. So, oh no, wait. This guy's playing triple. Sorry, I'm not sure of the gender of the people either. So if I say guy, I don't mean it as in like male. But this person is playing triple Greffer. I typically play 2 Greffer and 2 Bora. So I saw the 2 Bora and I thought at first that it was exactly like mine, but this one is playing triple Greffer, which I don't have a problem with, honestly, because if you have extra values in your hand, it's kind of annoying when you don't have a Greffer, so that makes sense. This deck is very quick because it plays triple Greffer. And everything else about it, like it main decks Royal Oppression, which I think is 100% correct if you're playing hybrid, because you do need the edge of stopping opposing special summons, because your special summon is just usually going to be a 2300 vanilla. That's not exactly the most impressive thing. It's just a damage-based thing. This deck is aiming to end the game as fast as possible. I think the side deck is more interesting than the main deck. The main deck is very straightforward again, but the side deck, I like that there are triple deck devastation virus. That's kind of insane. I totally get it though. The card is in Edison format, the equivalent of Crush Card virus. Like a lot of times when this resolves, it takes so many of your opponent's cards, if not all of them. In fact, I was watching a game that Rawnak was playing day 1, and he was using Fairy Frogs, and I believe it was game 3. His opponent uses Deck Devastation Virus when he attacks with Unifrog, and Rawnak chains My Body as a shield. His opponent chains Solemn Judgment, and so Deck Devi now resolves. Deck Devi hits the Unifrog on the field, the Treeborn on the field, then it takes, I want to say 6 cards out of his hand, like 6 actual monsters got destroyed out of his hand, and he was left with just 2 cards, and the 2 cards he was left with was Soul Exchange and Enemy Controller. Then he drew for turn, and his monster that he drew for turn got destroyed as well. So it took a total of either 7 or 8 cards. It was insane. No other card could get you that much back in the game, because I think that at the time when he got deck devied, he was up like 4 cards on his opponent. So for you to be up 4 cards and to go down to being not only neg, but just in a completely losing situation now. Like the game has completely shifted from you blatantly winning to you blatantly losing. And that's all because of the power of Deck Devi. I think the Deck Devi will single-handedly keep Black Wings as one of the best decks in Edison format forever, because there's nothing really that you can do too much about it. Like, yes, if you have Deck Devi and you have a monster on the field that will be destroyed by Deck Devi, My Body can work there. But if your opponent does it when you don't even have a monster on the field, if people start playing in that way where they know that frog players before you even bring back Treeborn Frog, if I suspect that you might have a card like My Body as a shield, and I just want to absolutely try to ruin you, then you can just deck dev them before they even get a monster. And that way, now my body's not even a real card because it can't be activated because it's not destroying anything on the field. So there's counterplay to my body. It's very interesting though. But yeah, this guy is siding 3 of them. There's also Nobleman of Crossouts, which I haven't really seen in the side deck in a while. I think this card is kind of fallen from grace. I personally do not like Nobleman of Crossout. I don't think it's very good, but I can kind of understand why you would want to side this because hamster decks, Ryko decks, and also just in general, any fairy engine deck, they do set a lot. So it's actually surprising that I don't like Nobleman of Crossout because I hate set monsters. I hate them so much. So maybe I should revisit Nobleman of Crossout. All right. We have a deck from Sanchan. This is also another top 8 deck. And this is essentially what I was talking about when I brought up that there's an A-tier Machina deck because it's not a deck that gets absolutely blown out by Cyber Dragon because it's not fully machine. It just happens to use Fortress as an engine, which I love, like Fortress, Gear Frame being Stratos, and then you have Machina Force to easily bring back Machina Fortress. I also like the fact that, you know, Hamster and Ryko, again, Hamster is absolutely insane of a card. It's probably the best set monster in the format. It's actually a +2 when you think about it. It gets Ryko, and Ryko then pops a card. So a lot of times, especially if the monster, oh my god, if the monster bounces off the hamster, like they don't kill the hamster when they attack it, and then you get the Ryko that just gets to live to your turn, it's literally +2, like actually factually +2 in that case. So it's really, really obnoxious. But yeah, Ryko with the hamster combos in this deck. Triple DD War Lady to remove literally anything that might be a problem to you. Triple Book of Moon, which is actually gaining a lot of popularity. This card was kind of slept on for a good portion of 2022. And at the end of 2022, we started to see a lot more play. And now it's just, I'm seeing it everywhere now. I'm seeing a lot of Book of Moon. The card does a lot. I think people were sleeping on it for a while. Would definitely say it's one of the most underrated cards in Edison format. And it's starting to finally get its just due. So spoiler alert for when I do my most underrated cards in Edison format video. Book of Moon will definitely be on that list. Other things that we have is Zombie World in the side deck. It shuts down the fairy decks because Christia can't be summoned while that's on the field because there are no fairies in the grave. They're all zombies. And then also Monarchs cannot be summoned unless you have a zombie Monarch, which there doesn't exist one in Edison. So you can't summon Caius, you can't summon Ryza, you can't summon Evil Hero, Malicious Edge. You really can't do much of anything with Zombie World on the field. Like it actually kind of shuts you down a good amount. I mean, I guess you can do substitute stuff, but outside of that, it really can put a damper in your plays with Zombie World. So card is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if it's the best card to side against those decks, but it does cover multiple matchups, and maybe that's what the goal was. You could also just play something like Soul Release, which is also here. So I guess that this person decided that they wanted to do both because maybe those matchups are really hard for this deck. Also Triple D Prison, Triple Destinato. Really cool stuff there. I like the one Compulse in the side. I like Compulse a lot. I think it's a very underrated card as well in the format. It just outs things very easily like Stardust Dragon, Colossal Fighters, Goyo Guardian. Puts Brio back, especially when zombies make it, because they don't get priority with Goblin Zombies. So you can just bounce it back before they can really do anything with the Mizuki that they just searched and stuff. Or with the Mizuki that they're going to search, I should say. So there's a lot that Compulse covers, and I'm a fan. And then the rest of the side deck, I think, like you just Fossil Dinos and Crows, you see those a lot. And yeah, I think the rest of this is pretty standard. Moving right along, we have Sheldon. So Sheldon is, let's see, this is another Machina deck, but this one is built a bit differently. So this one has triple pot. The last one, I believe Sanchan's just played 2 pots. So this one has triple pot. And this one also has Scrap Recycler, which I don't think, I didn't see Scrap Recycler in the other build. So you got Scrap Recycler in this build, as well as triple Hamster this time, and double Kaya. So this one is quite a bit different. But this is interesting to me that 2 very different versions of the same deck. Like they have a good amount of cards differently. This one plays triple force. Like my god, I really like this deck conceptually. I want to play it, so I'm probably going to do a video where I test this out on DB and post it on the channel. But I'm really interested in this because for 2 of this deck to have gotten this far is really, really good for this deck. Like I think that is actually impressive. This guy's only on 2 copies of DD Warrior Lady. But other than that, yeah, I like a lot of things that I'm seeing in this build. Let me just keep comparing this to the other one. So they both play Charge, they both play Lila, they both play Triple Raikou. Everyone plays 2 Hamster. I'm just trying to see if there's any like key differences. So there's a Plague Spreader Zombie in Sheldon's, and there's no Plague Spreader Zombie in Sanchan's. That's a difference. There's triple book in one, double book in the other. But yeah, a lot of the cards are very similar. Call It Haunted in one of the decks and not in the other. And then so the side deck here has Kaiku and Lightning Vortex. And another card, the third copy of DD Whirlity shows up. DD Whirlity's been getting a lot more play as well. And I would say that she was underrated for a while. But I think that the card is starting to see play. I mean, the fact that it's starting to see play outside of just fairies, right? Like, it used to be exclusively a deck that you would see in the pure fairy deck. And now it's just kind of leaving that and doing other things. And so, yeah, DD War Lady is really cool. It's removal for everything, and I really like that. Yeah, it's kind of hard to deal with a DD War Lady sometimes. Sometimes your opponent attacks with a Stardust into your face down monster, expecting it to be a Raikou or something, and it's just DD War Lady to banish it. It's a really, really good card, especially in simplified game states. I've seen people have to give up absolute zeros to a DD War Lady, and that is not the value you want out of your absolute zero. Like, if you're just trading it 1-for-1 with DD War Lady, that is not it. So, really good card. Also, banishing the monster. So, in that case, like, banishing the absolute zero could actually potentially prevent your opponent from activating another Miracle Fusion, because that zero might have been the water monster they needed, or it might have been the hero monster they needed. So, in a way, it's better than Raikou when that type of thing happens, unless you need the mills. And this deck does play 3-pot ever, so it's very possible that you might need the mills. Okay, so next we have a True Heroes top 8 deck. This is Diva Hero. I actually featured a True Hero on my YouTube channel a couple weeks ago. And this is basically the same build, except you can see where the cursor is pointing at to this Penguin Soldier that's in his deck. Really, really interesting tech choice here. And before you kind of think that this is awful, Penguin Soldier does have a lot of merit, in all honesty, in the format, especially if you're playing it for more than one reason. Obviously, the bounce effect is cool, but it's also a water monster, so when you're playing Triple Miracle Fusion, a ton of heroes, that makes sense that, like, at the very least, it's a water monster. The alternative is, of course, Snowman Eater. And in a lot of cases, Snowman Eater is going to be better, but then there are niche cases where Penguin Soldier is actually the card you want, because, for example, let's say your opponent summons Stardust, and they have another monster on the field that's from the extra deck, which is a common thing. Like, people start summoning, because of Stardust, they start comfortably summoning more boss monsters. And Penguin Soldier can actually out both of them at the same time, whereas Snowman Eater would just literally be destroyed by Stardust's effect. And yeah, then your opponent would maintain their advantage, probably get a +1 out of it and everything. So Penguin does something unique where it kind of acts as a boss monster check in the same way that Fossil Dyna does, but without the destroy part. Whereas Fossil Dyna also gets destroyed by Stardust Dragon, Penguin Soldier does not. So it kind of bypasses Stardust. And that's one of its main draws. You could technically also use it on your own cards, because it does say return up to 2 monsters on the field, and it could be yours or your opponent's. So if you had this set and your opponent didn't attack it, and then you summon Stratos and you searched and then you wanted Stratos again, you could flip Penguin Soldier and bounce Stratos back to your hand. You could even bounce Stratos and your Penguin Soldier back to your hand. I'm not sure if that would ever happen, but it's a thing that you could do. And so yeah, Penguin Soldier does have some merit. I'm not surprised about this. Also, Gold Sark is really, really good. And Diva Hero, in my opinion, this card fixes a lot of the problems with this deck. I always say that this deck's main issue is consistency, because you have to draw water monsters, you have to draw heroes, and you also have to draw Miracle Fusion. So you need all of those things to happen for your deck to properly function. And Gold Sark will typically fix one of the 3 being missing. You'll get 2 out of the 3 for sure. Like, you'll draw heroes and water, or Miracle Fusions and heroes, stuff like that. But then you might just be missing that one part. And literally, Gold Sark can just search whatever is the piece that you're missing. A lot of times I've seen the True Hero search for Future Fusion, which covers pretty much all of it. Like, it gets you an absolute zero, technically. It gets you a hero and a water. So that kind of just jumpstarts your whole deck. Also, Future Fusion is just problematic as hell. So it makes sense that that will be like the type of card you search. Dark Arm, Heavy Storm, Brain Control, things like that. The card's very, very strong. Is there anything interesting in the side? Let's see. So we got Smashing Grounds on the side deck. These are just for Christia. Christia is really, really good against this deck. And yeah, I think that a True Hero just really did not want to lose the entire game to getting Christia. So Smashing Ground and Prey is probably the strategy there. And the rest of it is pretty straightforward. One deck Devi, because every deck that summons big Dark Monsters, I think, should be siding this card. It is an absolute blowout. Like, actually a blowout. Light Imprisoning Mirror makes sense. Fairies and light decks are just very, very popular nowadays. Starlight Road probably for Blackwings, I'd imagine, and decks that play Judgment Dragon, stuff like that. Vanity's Fiend for frogs, Fossil Dinos for frogs, Vanity's Fiend for decks that special summon too much, like the fairy decks and stuff like that. They could just absolutely lose to it. Yeah, and another copy of No Moon Cross out in Top Cut. All right, let's move on to the top 4. So this is more of a standard pure Blackwing deck, and if I'm not mistaken, this main deck is almost exactly, if not exactly, Hydro Pump's main deck. Like, I know the side deck is different because Hydro was, when he won Peak of the Beak 2, I'm pretty sure he was siding Prohibition. So, but this is literally his main deck. If I think it's card for card. And then the side deck, it looks like, if I had to say, the Prohibitions came out for something, maybe the Snowmen. I don't recall if Hydro sided the Snowmen in that tournament. It either was Snowmen or Cyber Dragon. I forget. One of those wasn't in his side deck, I think. So whatever wasn't there is what the Prohibitions became, I feel like. And this is the deck. This is the same exact deck. So this person's name is OG Lock. So congratulations on top 4 to OG Lock. Yeah, pure Blackwings. Of course, we're going to see more than one Blackwing deck in Top Cut almost always. That's just one. It's the most represented deck, so that can't be forgotten. But on top of that, it's also obviously one of the best decks. And if you have really good people playing it, it will do well. And this list has also been proven already. It's already won a tournament, and now here it is top 4ing another tournament. So this list is actually very clearly, this main deck is good. Interestingly enough, this deck doesn't have oppression anywhere at all. And I don't think Hydro sided it either or mained it. So the pure Blackwing decks have just completely foregone playing Royal Oppression. And I get it for pure Blackwings because you don't have the triple value and the Greffers to kind of do things under oppression as well. So it could actually hurt, like it could hurt this deck, because if you need to really do a Blizzard play, there's not really anything that could, unless you have Whirlwind on the field, you might get locked out of being able to go into Blizzard. So that could be annoying. Whereas you always have the Greffer value or Sirocco play under oppression in hybrid. And so, yeah. The other deck in top 4 is Corinna playing Junk Frogs. There's no hero package in this deck. So the hero package has actually been completely removed. And it looks like Corinna has opted to play cards like Gold Sarcophagus, Enemy Controller in the main deck, Cold Waves in this deck, which is actually a pretty cool one with the Mobius. I like that a lot. Threatening Roar is really good. Also playing Battle Fader and Tragodia. So there's a lot of ways to stop attacks. And triple Junk Synchron with the Dark Arm Dragon makes sense to me. You play triple Kaius, triple Junk, double Battle Fader, Tragodia Gores. There's a ton of Dark Monsters. And then you play double Catastor and stuff like that in your extra deck. So you have so much extra deck space because you don't play Miracle Fusion. So now you have Dark Monsters in your extra deck as well. This deck makes Catastor very easily. And I like the fact that it can play Dark Arm. I don't know if this version is necessarily better than Guari's list that plays Malicious Edge and Inferno Prodigy. I really like that list, but I could just be too attached to it. But yeah, this is a cool deck as well. A lot of the same things are there. It's going to play virtually the same. The Unifrog in the main deck is cool too. I saw that being used, and that card outstings like Mask or Restrict. It can hit Pulling a Rug before you summon a Monarch. Unifrog has a lot of utility, so I'm never mad when I see that. And I think that in the world the Edison world that we exist in right now, Unifrog is probably good to just play somewhere in your Frog deck, either in the main or the side, but I'm a big fan of it. In the side deck, we have Trap Dust Shoot. I imagine that is for fairy decks that tend to hold a big hand. So like the Lightsworn Fairy deck holds a big hand. Trap Dust Shoot really hurts that deck. And the Frog Mirror Match always will have enough cards for you to Trap Dust Shoot them. So Trap Dust Shoot is really good in those matchups. Soul Exchange is obvious. Cards are actually insane. And then triple Vanity's Fiend, that card single-handedly wins games. Book of Moon to out things that are annoying like Fossil Dinos, opposing Vanity's Fiends, opposing Christias. Burial is an anti-side deck card. So like people side deck a lot of things that banish your cards and you just side in Burial. I wonder, when people side Burial, I wonder if they just side it in every single game. Like I wonder if Burial is in your deck every game that you play. Because I don't know if you're ever going to say, oh, I don't put this in this matchup because you just have to assume that everyone's going to side things to banish your frogs. And at that point, you might as well side burial in every single game. I'll be curious to see what the side decking techniques look like for this deck, because I always am interested when burial is in someone's frog side deck. It just seems scary to side a card for someone else's cards, like specifically for them banishing your guy during the game. Like, sure, there's a chance that they don't, and that would suck, but I guess if they don't banish your Treeborn Frog at any point during the game, you're probably winning that game, unless you're just outright losing to something like a Vanity's Fiend. So maybe it isn't as crazy as I think, but it is interesting that it's specifically designed to counter side deck cards. And there's nothing wrong with siding that way. Like, a lot of people do side that way. I imagine that My Body as a Shield is for the sided deck devastation viruses, like we talked about earlier. Anything else? It looks like Triple Crow, which is, again, a mirror match card, as anti-zombie card. I don't know if you'd sided in many other matchups, because Crow is kind of awkward sometimes, but it is still a very good hand trap, a very good side card. And yeah, I think that that's pretty much everything that I have to say on this top 4 deck. All right, so going on to second place, we have Trap Dragons. Now, I don't know if there's a name for this deck, but this deck was piloted by Zico. I think I'm saying that correctly. I hope I'm saying it correctly. So congrats to Zico for getting second. I've seen on Keegan's channel this deck a couple times, or variants of this type of deck, where it just plays a bunch of monsters, a bunch of dragons, and a lot of traps. And that always seemed a bit better to me than raw playing Dragon Turbo. I shit on Dragon Turbo often because of its consistency issues and how you just lose the game. You can't defend yourself really with that deck, and your hands are just really shitty often. And when you lose, it has nothing to do with your skill or lack thereof. It just tends to come down to my hand was unplayable, or my hand had one very narrow play, and my opponent stopped my very narrow one play because I didn't open the nuts, and therefore I lost. So this build is aiming to actually duel. Obviously, the goal starts are to get Future Fusion, and if you draw Future Fusion, you're not trying to duel at that point, but every deck has his blowout cards, right? So can't be too mad at that. It has resilience with the Mash Dragons. They search out Totem and Exploder, which are just outs to a lot of things. And then triple DD War Lady again. This card is actually seeing a lot of play now in Edison format. Like, holy hell. DD Warrior Lady really showing up. Here's Book of Moon again as well. These cards are only up and up. Like, I am really happy to see cards like DD Warrior Lady and Book of Moon showing up a lot more. Also, another copy of My Body as a Shield in Top Cut. So there's a couple things that I'm seeing now that are just really rising in popularity after this tournament. Also, Prohibition in the side deck is really cool. Prohibition's good. Again, you can call Treeborn Frog against frogs, and then they literally can't bring it back. You can call Drill Warrior against plants, and that's really nasty because he won't come back. And then you can just do other things like call whatever your opponent's out would be. So if your opponent has 4 fairies, you're just like, oh, I don't want you to have Christia. They have 4 names for Judgment Dragon. You just call JD. There's a lot of different things that you can do with Prohibition. It's a very malleable card. It can cover a lot of bases, and that's what I like about it. If you draw a hand of several traps and you just want to confidently set all of them, call Heavy Storm. Set 4. Fuck it. Crossout is here again. Crossout is definitely rising in popularity. I can see this deck siding Crossout because a lot of things that deal with your monsters are going to be set things. So Crossout definitely makes sense there. Soul Taker. I saw this card used a lot in the Top Cut, actually, by Zico to out the Dupe Frog lock. Like the Dupe lock gets broken up by Soul Taker, and not only that, it makes Dupe miss timing. So it's a straight up 1-for-1 with Dupe Frog, and they don't get anything back, which is really, really good. Like, really, really good. It also outs Dimensional Alchemist the same way. Like, he will miss timing as well. So in that regard, I'm really liking Soul Taker. Interestingly enough, though, Smash and Ground is in the main deck. And I'm wondering if that should just be another copy of Soul Taker, because in all honesty, dragons don't care about life points as much as a lot of the other decks. Like, the Dragon Turbo deck fully plays triple upstart and can fully kill you at 11,000 in one turn. So I don't know if you necessarily need Smashing Ground over just playing Soul Taker blatantly. And that's maybe something that Zico realized during the tournament. But I would say that if you're going to play Soul Taker on your side, I would probably main one as well instead of Smashing Ground, because you get dupe lock game 1 too. Like, the deck tries to dupe lock you game 1 and game 2. So it just makes sense to me if you're trying to out that and not give them a plus, because that's why you would play Soul Taker, right? Like, otherwise you just side deck another copy of Smashing Ground. But like, the fact that you're specifically, I think, specifically trying to out things like Dimensional Alchemist, And the dupe block, I think that Soul Taker just makes more sense. And I don't think the life point gain is that crazy, especially because you're not playing Upstart, so you're not giving them 4,000 life points in a game or anything. But yeah, other than that, this deck's Solidarity. That is interesting, because in theory, DD War Lady will never be in your graveyard. And I guess that every time a DD War Lady would be destroyed, you just always banish it. So the only way that I guess she can get destroyed and actually go to grave is if you set her and then your opponent flipped Raikou and popped her or something like that. A disaster like that or skill drain. Really weird things have to happen. Torrential Tribute, right? Which is not the most popular anymore. But yeah, those type of things are the only things that could cause the Solidarity to be dead. Other than that, it makes your guys big, but I wonder, because your guys are already kind of big, like the main ones you summon. I mean, sure, Red Eyes Wyvern being 2,600 with Solidarity is actually absurd. But yeah, interesting card to see in a side deck. I'm not mad at it, but I'm just wondering if it's necessary and what was the exact matchup where you're like, I need Solidarity in this matchup because my guys need to be big. I guess also Quackimere Drago being triplicate and also being 2,700 is wild, but it still doesn't beat certain things. Like you don't beat Christia at that attack stat still. But yeah, Drago being that big is obviously problematic. Also, Drago's just insane in this format because of Black Wings being so popular and because of fairies and fairy variants being popular. It just shits on both of those, or it can rather, and that is really good. I guess it doesn't do as well against Blackwing, but it can, because Blackwings has Sirocco as a natural out, like I'm just bigger than you, and you don't have an Honest or Kalut. But yeah, you have outs at least, but like fairies can have it really rough because of Drago. They play so many battle recruiter guys, so many Shining Angels, Nova Summoners, and yeah, this really hurts. But yeah, other than that, this looks like the standard trap dragon deck. I'm not really sure of what. I know there's a deck called Hopeless Dragon, but I think Hopeless Dragon is Nolaris, I think. And then there's a Disaster Dragon deck. So maybe this is Disaster Dragon. I'm not really sure. You guys can let me know in the comment section though. All right. First place goes to Carpath. Congratulations to Carpath for winning Deck Devastators 3. This is a deck that he actually featured on his channel, I think in his Jank section. Like I'm pretty sure this was played in a Jank video, but it was obviously it was a bit different at the time because it was probably at the time it was still being developed and experimental. And then he realized there's something actually here. Like this might have started as something janky, but then he realized maybe if I don't play, I think at the time it had multiple copies of Enrise and they're kind of bricky, maybe triple Christia. I'm not exactly sure what the original list was, but check that out on Carpath's channel. He definitely did a video playing this deck. And a lot of things have just been refined, you can tell. I like the idea that Decree and traps exist in this deck. And the traps that are in this deck are really, 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 really ignorant. Trap Dust Shoot is obviously a game-winning card by itself. I imagine it created a lot of non-games for him, and games where he just won because of Dust Shoot. Torrential Tribute helps to out things like Christia and Quackimere Drago, which we actually saw him do in the finals. Torrential Tribute helped to get rid of that shit. And Return to Dimension is a win condition. So like all three of the traps that he plays outside of Decree can be used to essentially win the game or take back the game, and that is really good. And then Decree is because you don't run that many traps, and you really want your boss monsters to go through. So when you summon Christia, or you summon a Caius or whatever, your opponent just wants to like Bottomless or Torrential or Mirror Force you or whatever they do. Having a Decree to stick your boss monsters in this deck, because your boss monsters are kind of unreal, is really good. Enrise is insane, actually, by the way. Like, Enrise is kind of hard to summon. You need 3 fairies, 3 light fairies, and 1 dark fiend. You do play triple Caius. Sangan is a fiend. I'm pretty sure Shagoti is a fiend. And yeah, I think that those are your dark fiends. So you have plenty, and Caius being like the most popular card in the format. Also, Enrise, it has an effect that banishes a face-up monster your opponent controls. I'm pretty sure is what the effect is. And that is just really, really good. Like, banishing it specifically is kind of nonsense. So I'm not mad at that. Also, even though it won't really end up in the graveyard too often, Battle Fader is a dark fiend as well. I don't count it as much because of the fact that, again, I don't really see it ending up in the graveyard too much, but it could. You do play Raikou, like 1 copy of Raikou and 1 copy of Card Trooper. So if it does get milled, there's your Dark Fairy. Oh, and Gores. I mean, how could I forget, right? Like, Gores is also. So it plays a good amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you have 7 Dark Fiends. Or no, 8. Sangan as well. So there are 8 Dark Fiends, so plenty. And then you have a shit ton of light fairies. I mean, that is like, this is fully a fairy deck, but also a chaos deck because it plays the dark side as well. I like this deck a lot. I like that it takes something that I don't like about the fairy deck, which is too many normal summons, and it kind of adds a lot of boss monsters to it. So you have Chaos Sorcerer, Enrise, 2 Christias, and then you also have things like triple Kaias, Gors, and Trag, which are in their own right, they're kind of bossy as well. They take a bit of setup to bring out, and then they have higher stat lines than, you know, monsters that are below their star level. So in a way, like Caius is a boss monster, Tragodia is a boss monster, Gors is also a boss monster, and I look at them as such. So it's playing a shit ton of boss monsters, and that just helps with the whole, oh, I have too many normal summons, and I don't want to just be sitting here the whole game setting monsters. Like, I can actually do explosive things, and I'm always a fan of that. I always love seeing Cyber Valley in Mind Control, especially when you play things like Shining Angel, because you can search it at any point and just get a free draw 2, which is a +1. You take their monster, you draw 2 off of it. You got your Cyber Valley and Mind Control back by drawing 2. Your opponent literally lost a monster because you took it with Mind Control. So it is a straight up +1 when you do that. And this deck is, every fairy deck I feel like is trying to plus on you in some way. He opted for 1 copy of DD War Lady just as a searchable way to deal with anything, but not to clog up his hands with having too many copies, which makes perfect sense to me. Sometimes, especially when you play the old school fairy decks, the pure fairy decks, triple DD War Lady can clog. I've actually lost a game because of it against Lightsworn where I just had double DD War Lady and he opened up way too fast for me and I got destroyed. So just having 1 copy when you need it is fine in this type of deck because you can search it. Whereas the other decks that play triple, they're not really searching DD War Lady. So in this case, you can technically say he has like 4 or 5 copies of DD War Lady, 3 Shining Angels and a Nova Summoner, which can all lead into her. So that's really good. As for the side, he saw his triple Electric Virus, and when I was watching the finals, it actually won game 2 because just stealing your opponent's Drago and tributing it, or stealing their Red Eyes and stuff like that is really a big deal. Apparently, that's also a bad matchup for this deck because of Drago. So yeah, triple Electric Virus is just really good. Of the third Christie's there, the 1 orb, or as we like to call it, Consecrated Light. Consecrated Light is around, and it's searchable, of course, with Nova Summoner and Shining Angel, so you essentially play like 5 copies of it. You can keep recurring it too with Dimensional Alchemist if you banish it, with Chaos Sorcerer or Endrise and stuff like that. So the orb is really good. You don't need a ton of it in this particular deck. And then My Body's a Shield making its debut again. This card is being cited a lot, and I just have to assume again that it's because of Deck Devastation Virus. Like, I just have to assume that everyone who's playing this card in their side deck is doing it because Deck Devi is that fucking good against their deck. I mean, if you look at this deck right now, it would hit, so there's 29 monsters. It would hit all but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It would hit all but 9. So it would hit 20 monsters. There are 20 monsters that would get destroyed by Deck Devastation Virus. Tragodia gets hit, and everything that's not Chaos Sorcerer, Endrise, Christia, Triple Caius, and Cyber Dragon. Everything else is getting hit. And Tragodia is 0/0 in your hand, by the way, for people who don't know. Tragodia counts as a 0/0 in your hand. So it gets destroyed by Deck Devastation Virus. But yeah, that card is really good against this deck. But on top of that, Carpath also has Decrees in the main deck. I imagine that deck inside Deck Devi, the Decrees just stay in. So it's like, I want to have more than just My Body as a Shield to deal with that. And I get it. That card literally wins games. Like I said, that one game where Rodnock lost like 8 cards to just Deck Devi when he was completely winning the game. Like, it wasn't even close. And that just literally won his opponent the game. So Mind Crush in the side deck, I like that card a lot. It's good against all the opposing Christia decks. You can kind of, here's how I feel about Mind Crush. Sure, you don't always have the information that your opponent actually has what you're afraid of, but 9 times out of 10, if you just call, like if they have 4 fairies, I'm calling Christia because I would lose the game anyway if you did have it. So if you have it and I'm scared to call it because I don't know you have Christia for sure, I'm just going to lose the Christia now. I might as well call it, and if I'm wrong, sure, I'll lose a card out of my hand. But like, I'd rather be in a position where all I lost was a card out of my hand in a Mind Crush than you establishing an actual Christia when you have 4 fairies. Same thing with cards like Dark Arm. Like, fuck it. If they have 3 darks and you're really frantic about it, just call Dark Arm. Like, even if you don't know if they have it, just call it. Like, and that's the case with a lot of things. If you set a bunch of back row and you're saying to yourself, if he has Heavy, I lose, just call Heavy Storm with Mind Crush. Like, that happens pretty often. And you can do the same thing with Brain Control. So the card actually outs a lot of things. And if you're really good, you can call exactly the only card that can out your field or your setup. And if your opponent has it, great, they get destroyed. If they don't have it, and you put yourself in the correct position, now you just win the game because that was the only card they could have had. They didn't have it. You discard a card. Oh, well, you're still being toppled over by whatever I have on the field. Like my Christia, the only out that you could have had is brain control. So I call brain control so you don't kill me. And now, even if you have it or not, I win the game because brain control was your only out. And the games do come down to your only out is X. So if you know how to do that, then it's a very, very good card. Solemn is in the side deck. That's an interesting one. But I always like the theory of summoning something where your opponent can't special summon. Back in the day, there was the Necros Genlock, and Patrick Hoban popularized playing the Genlock with Solemn Scolding. And this is kind of the same idea here to me, where if you establish Christia and you set Solemn Judgment, that's a blowout. Like they likely won't out the Christia to begin with, but in a rare case they do something to it, you're just like, absolutely not, I'm going to Solemn that, and then the game just falls apart for them. So I get the Solemn. Other than that, I think the rest of the side deck, there's another copy of Cyber Dragon for the double Chimera tech in the extra deck. Double DD Crow, because, who doesn't play that card? 2 more Book of Moons. There's another deck in the top 8, I just want to say, that has triple Book of Moons somewhere in its list. Like, if not 3 of it, people play 2 of it, but there's a lot of Book of Moons. Let's just quickly look at. So the first place deck played Book of Moon. Second place played Book of Moon. Third sided Book of Moon. Another top 4 deck played 2 Book of Moon. We have top 8 now. This is a True Heroes Diva Hero deck. So this deck does not play Book of Moon. But then we have another top 8 deck playing Book of Moon, another top 8 deck playing Book of Moon, and so 6 out of 8 decks played Book of Moon. Most of them playing triplicate, and that is that's very telling. That is actually very telling that Book of Moon is being ran in basically triplicate now, and people are performing really well with the card. Like, it is everywhere, and that is insane. So yeah, the stock on Book of Moon is way, way up, and yeah, I'm a fan. I am a fan of that card. Big fan. If you look at my Gravekeeper's deck profile, way back in the day, I played triple of that card as well. I know how ridiculous it can be, so I'm not mad that it's gaining a lot of popularity in Edison format. People are realizing that it's really strong. It doesn't remove the monster, but it outs things that are really important, like brain control, and that's important. Like, honestly, the fact that it gets over brain control, or like protects you from just brain control destroying you, is huge. That by itself is just worth its weight in gold. But then other things like protect your monsters from bottomless trap hole, I think that's really important. Especially, let's say you have a Icarus attack in your hand, and you summon a Blackwing monster, and they bottomless, and then you Book of Moon it, and now you can set Icarus attack. And your opponent now has to deal with your Icarus attack. Whereas if you just don't play that card in your deck at all, you don't play Book of Moon, when you get bottomless, well, it's just, the bottomless just goes through. Like, it just goes through, and you could end up in a really, really bad spot. So, yeah, Book of Moon is really, really nice. Also, yeah, I guess if we're talking about Blackwings and Book of Moon, like if I summon Shura and you bottomless it and I booked it, I could have Blizzard in my hand, so I really need this Shura to be in the graveyard at some point, and I really just want to make sure that I can set my Icarus attack as well. There's a lot of good synergy in Blackwings, but then it just does things in all the other decks. And that is, again, that's worth its weight in gold. It outs annoying monsters like Christia. She's super popular now, as you can tell. Christia's just out here. So yeah, Christia is definitely one of the best boss monsters in the format. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review of the top 8 decks from Deck Devastators 3. Shout out to everyone who was running the event. I got these deck lists off of the Crow's Nest YouTube channel, so subscribe to them, check out their channel. Lots of good content over there as well. But yeah, this was a really, really dope tournament. I'm really, really happy that things are still changing. I didn't have this Chaos Fairy deck on my bingo card for 2023 decks that would be winning a tournament. So there's that. And I'm going to a PS5 tournament in like 3 weeks. So I don't know if anyone's going to actually bring this deck to that tournament. But yeah, it's definitely competitive for us, right? Like, it has to be a competitive deck. And yeah, it would be interesting to see more people playing stuff like this. So anyways, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.